Education special meeting. The board previously met in closed sessions under exception C1, C11, and C21. I can get a roll call vote, please. A roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Your mic's not on.
All right, if we can restart the roll call just to make sure.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, I'd like a motion to resume open session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, all right. And I see Principal Hill in the room, so if you'd be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to move to item 6A, which is approval of the minutes of the open session meeting of May 11th, 2021.
Mr. Riddle, I make a motion we approve those minutes as presented.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments, questions, or corrections to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We now have the opportunity for public comment. Thank you. At this time, the only name on the list is Chester. If you'd be so kind as to step up to the microphone, just state your first and last name. All right, and just a reminder, public comment, speakers get 3 minutes. Get 3 minutes. If you need translation services will be given to you, and you will get 6 minutes to make your comments. To allow for translation, we do ask that you refrain from mentioning staff or student names in your remarks. With that, whenever you're ready, Chester, the time.
These are some questions that parents called me to ask. Okay? Are you teaching CRT here, critical race theory? Number one. Does equity mean quotas? Number two. How will equity result in academic achievement for the children? That's it.
Thank you. All right, that was the only name on the list. So we will continue to our consent agenda. As a reminder for those who don't attend often or may be participating by phone, the consent agenda was a practice put in place by the former board president and continued by myself in order to expedite the work of the school board. The consent agenda are items that should be previously discussed, non-controversial, and any board member can request that any items be held over for any reason. We do not do this to hide any work of the board, but to make things move more efficiently during our school meetings. So the consent agenda is there. Are there any items that any board member would like held over to vote on separately or because they have questions? There is one item that I didn't have a chance, and I know Ms. Leguizamo, if I'm not mistaken, you had questions about item D too, correct?
Yeah, I submitted all of my edits for that one. I did have an edit for the parent-student handbook
Yeah, so
that
that
I
was
just
D.
want to discuss as we bring up the motion.
Well, if we're going to have questions on it, then we should pull it out. So we have
Oh, sorry, pull it out.
consent agenda. We're asking for a motion to approve items A, B, C, and E.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, so that's item 8A, approval to attend the CUBE 2021 annual conference. Sorry, we can go back up. We didn't finish with the consent. There we go. Not yet. Keep. There we go. Item B, policy 5212, grading, second reading. 8C, policy 5213, final examination, second reading. And item E, approval of additional paving of Waukegan High School Brookside Campus, Circle Drive, curb repair, and sidewalk work. All right, we now are going back to item 8D, Parent-Student Handbook on Rights, Responsibilities, 2021-2022, second reading. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Leguizamo. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments or questions?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo.
So, as I was reading through the handbook, it was noted on page 48. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch my,
Of the second reading.
of the second reading, yes. Actually, I lost it. Okay, no, sorry. All right, it is clarification. On page 13, as it relates to immigrant student rights, there's a bullet point in there that talks about engaging in practices that might, quote unquote, chill undocumented students and families from accessing educational services. I just wanted to update the student handbook to change the word chill and replace it with discourage the participation for. Just to be more clear on what that chill reference is. Chill was more used like back in 2014 under immigrational statuses or immigrational information. So I think it's a little bit more older term and just wanted to upgrade the handbook with that. So it would read, engaging in practices that might discourage the participation for undocumented students and their families from accessing educational services. Just wanted to get consensus from the board if that's okay to amend.
I like that. Very nice.
Just wanted to make sure. Are there any?
Yeah, I got it. No, I got it. I found it. I didn't realize it was item 3. Or further down.
So there's just a question procedurally. What we are asking is not substantive changes to the book, but just for language conversations. And so the question was, can we make a motion without having to hold this over to bring it to a third reading? I know Miss or Dr. Hillary is wants to get this approved so that they can get the book printed before the start of school. And so I also had just a technical change that I was requesting, and that was to, we received a letter from Ms. Malter, which was also read here publicly by
Brother Blanks.
Brother Blanks, in which she wanted to make it more clear that in addition to the responsibilities that we laid out, that the PTAC annually review pupil discipline policies and the implementation of those policies. And so I'm asking that we insert that language into the welcome from the PTAC committee.
In the PTAC committee letter?
Mhm.
Dr. Hillary, was that already in there? Was Dr. Hillary or Mr. Christensen, whomever might have the information, was that already in the PTAC's letter? Reference to reviewing policy, annual review of policy and its implementation? Yes. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
With that, you have a motion, or I guess would you amend the motion? Is that what we have to pass, the amended motion? So, yes.
Okay, so I amend my motion to include the 2 changes as discussed herein.
Correct. So we have that from Ms. Leguizamo. What about yourself, Mr. Riddle? Were you
Yeah,
a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Liquidamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. All right, we are now in purchases and contracts. So purchases and contracts, we have high school math materials 9A. Do we have a motion to approve 9A high school math materials, or superintendent, I'm sorry.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to approve the purchase of Carnegie Math License Resources and Professional Development for grades 9 through 12 in the amount of $192,330. $192,000, I'm sorry.
I was like.
Let me put my glasses on.
Time out.
Hold on. Now I got them. $192,330. Thank you for your assistance.
So moved.
A motion by
second.
Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any comments or questions on the motion?
couldn't see it.
Question?
more zeros.
Go ahead, Ms. Lozamo.
I don't know who to pose this question to, but, so included in this packet, we'll be able to get the app for the calculator on our Chromebooks, which I totally agree with. However, when it comes to the testing, SAT testing, and so on and so forth, I believe our Chromebooks are not allowed to be used in there for testing, or has that changed? I know there's been a lot of adjustments lately. Just trying to understand so that parents would understand if do they still need to or not need to purchase that calculator, which is a very high-priced item
Dr. Null?
for school supplies.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Superintendent, Board President, members of the board and community. I have Patrick Cole here, our 9 through 12 high school math coordinator, who can answer that question. Here you go.
The Chromebook is currently not allowed on the testing system. However, we do have handheld calculators for in class. So this would, and for when we do the SAT testing, we do collect the classroom sets and use them as loaners to the students. So the students do have calculators available on the standardized testing. The apps are for during the regular school year. We leave the sets in class, but this would provide the students with the opportunity to manipulate that same calculator outside of the school setting.
And it's very similar from the actual calculator to the app. So if they were to not ever use the calculator, take the SAT, and would they know how to use the second feature and all that extra stuff?
Yes, they will.
Compared from the app to the calculator?
Yes, if they never use the manual one, but they only use the one on their Chromebook, it's exactly the same. And so, yes, they would know how to use it.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Any other questions on this item? If not, roll call vote.
Okay.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Liquidamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. We are now at item 9B, renewal agreement for Ombudsman Educational Services, General Education, Alternative Placement Services for students grades 7 through 12.
It is the recommendation that the Board of Education approve the renewal agreement between Waukegan Public Schools and Ombudsman's Educational Services and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement.
Need a motion. Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve the motion.
Motion, and I heard Mr. McBride as a second. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, are we just doing a 1-year approval? Or why are we doing a 3-year renewal?
Dr. Hillary?
Why is it 3 years instead of just one?
Good evening.
And renewable annually?
Good evening, Board Member Superintendent. The agreements for the past for Ombudsman have been in 3-year increments, and this is no different from past practice. So we tend to do a 3-year agreement because it stabilizes their ability to rent their facilities, as well as we can project the number of students that we can potentially send to the school throughout those 3 years. So it's not an out of the ordinary agreement, multi-year agreement.
Are we charged for 30 students if we do or do not send them? If we only send 20 students, are we still charged for 30 students?
No, we're charged for the number of students that we send, but we send students in shorter increments, and we actually end up getting almost 90 students. The way that we revamped it, we're getting 90 students for the price of 30, if that logic makes sense. We just leave them there a shorter amount of time, and then we allow for, they have 3 sessions,
Get 'em back.
so we can have 3 placements. So we get typically 90 in a term.
And I question it too, but I'm glad you explained it. I understand it more thoroughly now than what I just seen it on paper. And I do know that there's a need. I remember when we first brought Busman into the district. And I'm sure as time go on, with some of the issues that we're going to be having, we're going to need to place them somewhere. And then,
Yes, this is just for general ed students. Our diverse learners have a different component of ombudsman,
Right.
but we do work closely with them for general ed. They did a wonderful job during the pandemic with our students that were placed there. We get regular monitoring, progress monitoring, things of that nature. So they have really answered the call as it relates to our general ed students.
and we have 2 sites with them on Green Bay and Sunset, correct?
For general ed, we have 1 site, and that's on Sunset. The site on Green Bay is for our diverse learners.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. If there are none further, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Liquizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. We are now at item 9C, the Waukegan High School Social Science Materials.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the purchase of Government Alive Student Edition in the amount of $34,300.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve this as stated.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
I second.
second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any comments, questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Question?
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
Just to be sure, so it is only 34,300, not based off of the quote that says a total of $72,030, right? Just wanted to triple check.
Dr. Noel?
I'm sorry, Dr. Note, there is an attached quote on here, and it has a grand total of $72,030. And I just wanted to make sure that we are only approving the $34,300. Just triple checking.
So looking at the presentation deck that was provided, and I have Mr. Stonis here as well, the social studies coordinator, it does see the amount is $34,300, so I'm not sure the discrepancy in the quote, but perhaps he can explain.
The quote came from, good evening, everyone. The quote came from one vendor, so the amounts are the same, so I'm ordering another textbook for U.S. history. That one is going to ESSER, so it was split. This one's going local, the other one's going through ESSER grants, so that's why that total is that. But the amount for this purchase is $34,300.
Okay, okay. So then we'll see the another request for the balance.
Through that other amount's going through the grant.
Through the grant.
Yeah,
There'll
so-
be another presentation.
yeah, there'll be another presentation. Right, exactly. Right.
But it also includes shipping of 5%. And that's not-
Right, yeah, that's the quote that I got from the vendor. So I made sure I had them resubmit it because of shipping and logistical issues going on right now. So that's what I got. That's the most recent amount I received. So, yes.
The social science material, is it updated?
It is. The reason I'm ordering it because the materials that the students are currently using are woefully out of date. The resource kits, for instance, had 3.5-inch floppy disk and CD-ROMs. So I thought it was time for an update for those textbooks.
So it's going to cover all of the social issues that we've seen in the last 2-3 years in the material?
It should, but really where those issues are going to be covered is through our civics course.
Okay.
So our government course is more foundational, where our students are going to be learning the tenets of government, how government functions,
Right.
and all that. where they apply it is through the civics course. So as we did a few years ago prior to COVID, the civics fair, that's where our students will be sort of demonstrating what they learned through issues that they determined on their own, working in groups and
Okay.
that nature.
Ms. Pope?
If it's possible, could we request that the board would approve the entire amount irrespective of the source of funds that we're using to pay for it so that we could proceed with the purchase? So it would be advanced with local money, but ultimately funded through the ESSER fund for the balance of this purchase.
So can we just update the dollar amount to be the 72,000 and then put budget source teaching and learning and ESSER funds?
Yes.
Can we amend that motion to look that way?
I'm gonna ask Kathy. I know this is one of those, it's been posted, it's been reviewed for 2 days, and I'm hesitant to
Right.
amend the amount.
Right now.
Because, oh yeah, no one, the public has not seen it, only us has seen the quote itself of 72,000.
No, I believe the quote was published.
No,
No.
quote was in the attachment.
It was published.
Quote was in.
Is it going to slow down progress, Gwen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a budget meeting. I mean, if we delay about a week
Yeah.
just to make sure we are,
Because if we're going to place the entire order, we only have authority to pay for half of it.
Right.
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 okay. Are we able to hold for 1 week?
So what's the question?
Are we able to hold?
Delaying this vote, Mr. Stonis, will that delay in the materials being in district on time for students' arrival?
It would for government, yes. The other orders for U.S. history, and I have some flex time in the curriculum for that. So Dr. Null and I were just discussing that. So the other order it's the same, it's a material order, same situation for our 10th grade students. That one could be delayed if need be, but the government books are a priority.
Well, we don't want to do anything that cause our kids a burden because of the fact of a technicality. Our kids, if they need it, they need it. And if we're going to do it tomorrow, we can do it today. It's just a matter of concern whether there's anything out of place. So we know what you're spending. So to me, it's a no-brainer to go ahead on and proceed with them, giving them the opportunity, the offer to go ahead on and purchase what they need to purchase for our kids.
So we can go ahead and approve the motion as presented, and then if we
Right.
want to bring the other one back for
Right.
ratification at a future board meeting.
Right. Also, Board President, could I ask one more question?
Go ahead,
This is
Mr.
a
Renner.
6-year digital license, so it's not $34,000 per year, it's just one time?
One time, right. The bulk of that amount is for print
Okay.
books.
Right.
But again, as I stated, the other book was so old that it didn't, the digital resources were actually physical digital resources, right? So I wanted to get an updated version with the digital version in the event, again, if we have to go, God forbid, on another lockdown or whatever it is. It would be good to have that resource available to our students through their Chromebooks.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. Item 9D, approval of emergency life safety request, Waukegan High School, Washington campus, room 350 mechanical replacement.
It is the recommendation that the board authorize the superintendent to use the operation and maintenance funds to repair mechanical equipment in room 350 at the Waukegan High School, Washington campus. The recommended contractor to perform this work is Aircon Refrigeration and Heating Incorporated, located at 123 Lake Street, Waukegan, Illinois, 60085. The proposed estimated cost is $43,313.
Make a motion that we accept the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hannah, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like for Mr. DeBarron to come up and let us know what that $43,000 is going to be used for.
That's right there. I'd like to say something while he's
Go ahead,
talking.
Ms.
I'd like to,
Hannah.
I'd like to commend, the district for, using local vendors, for this, particular, contract.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. And then, so the question is, what are we approving? And then, Mr. Riddle had a question, so go ahead, Deputy Mobley.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, members of the board, community, and colleagues. So as noted in the agenda item, in room 350 at Washington campus, we have several mechanical items that need to be addressed. We've made several repairs to those items over the years, particularly in the ceiling-mounted VAV box that provides heating and cooling. We are at the point where repairs are not enough because they're happening far too often. We need to replace, which is why we have the information provided in front of you. And you'll see the proposal for Marcon Refrigeration is dated as of July. This is a decision we made recently to ensure that we did not have any failures when the school year immediately started. There are some additional technical aspects that Mr. Kruckelberg can provide for you, but I did want to give that overview.
Hi, good evening. The proposed work that we submitted for you to review today includes demo of the 44-year-old unit that we can no longer find parts for. It's in a precarious position in the ceiling and has the ventilation shaft going through the roof. So there's a lot of work involved in the demo of the existing unit, the recapture of the refrigerant that's in it, because that all has to be saved. The purchase of a new unit, the installation of ductwork, insulation, and we're going to add a condensing unit to what we used to have so that those rooms are now air conditioned as well as heated and ventilated. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was instead of my question. It kind of reminds me of a one board meeting we had when Mrs. Lanou came up and talked about our buildings and how important it is to have our buildings well up to grade for our kids to be in. And I do know that going forward with the agenda, we're going to have to talk about some more infrastructure. You know, I myself, I was looking at, I took a ride around North School over the weekend, and it's in bad shape to the point that it needs some serious work, emergency work, because it looked like it's going to fall down. Like you said, 44 years. I think we've done good. Most of the time, a unit, the expected out of a unit is about 20 years, so we've done good. So, and back to Ms. Hannah, I'm glad that you did happen to grab a local vendor to take care of the work that needed to be did.
Thank you.
All right. I had just one question, and that is we're giving this contract out to a local vendor because it's considered emergency work, right? We don't have to bid out anything. It's not normal maintenance.
That's why it's in front of you.
Emergency maintenance.
That's why it's in front of you, because we need to buy it now.
We need to get it now before the kids get in.
We're going to try to get it in before the kids get there. We're
Right.
not going to use that room until it's in.
Right.
Because it provides the ventilation for the space.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Sorry, hopefully the last question. But does this include asbestos abatement? If so, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, ma'am, there's no abatement required.
No, okay, not for this location.
Not for
Perfect.
this one.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Kruckenberg. Next up, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. Now we have item 9E, which is the approval of North Elementary School masonry discovery item repairs, roofing repairs.
It is the recommendation that the Board of Education authorizes superintendent or her designee to review and approve the emergency roofing repairs at North Elementary once a final architect investigation report is provided to the district administration. Estimated cost of repairs should not exceed $50,000, but final details will be provided to the school board at a future meeting.
Mr. Riddle, I so move we approve the motion for emergency repairs at North School as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Board President, I believe, isn't it supposed to also indicate here in the board agenda that it is emergency life safety? I just wanted to get a point of clarification on that.
It does say on the recommended action that it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Recommended action.
Approve emergency roofing repairs at North Elementary. And it was.
May I?
Approve.
It's not technically roofing repairs. It's to save the roof.
Yes.
Yes, from falling in.
There's steel beams inside the masonry walls
Okay, I mean.
that have deteriorated
Good with that
badly.
then. All right, Ms.
And we need to shore the roof structure to hold it in place while we take out those rusted beams and put in fresh ones and then brick it back up. So the work that's being done is actually steel work, it's not roofing work.
Right.
And the condition that we discovered while we were tuck pointing the building and doing regular maintenance on the building made it apparent to us that we had to fix it now. So we called the structural engineers, got the designs for how to make the repairs, and we are moving ahead with it. We can apply for emergency life safety funds after the fact, when we know what the actual cost is. So right now, we're just guessing at how much time and material we're going to spend to fix the deteriorated beams. So we'll be coming back with a final number later and probably applying for life safety funds at that point.
And you wouldn't have found that out if you wouldn't have been tough point.
We were doing the right thing, weren't we?
Sure were.
Ms. Hannah?
Yeah, I am looking at the budget source, FY 2020 Capital Projects Fund, or Operation and Maintenance Fund. Have we approved the Capital Projects Fund for FY 2020?
2022.
22?
Yeah, there's a or. We haven't approved the final
We
budget.
haven't approved it yet, so I'm not sure that should be noted on this
I think you're right.
request.
I think that should be corrected.
It needs to be
Capital
corrected.
2021.
In the budget that we presented both at Budget Workshop 1 and Budget Workshop 2, we included Fund 60, which is capital projects, and Fund 20. Most of the capital improvements to the buildings are housed in Fund 60, which is capital projects fund.
Okay, but this is not Capital Projects Fund from ESSER.
This
I'm not
particular
sure.
work could qualify to go in ESSER, but
May-
currently it's not in ESSER. It's just going to be housed locally. But we're still working on the funding plan for ESSER. But this is eligible for ESSER because it's roofing, ventilation. And that would be housed in Fund 60, capital projects.
Okay. Yeah, so one, we have to do it, and we should do it. So
Yeah, I'm not.
no, the vote. I get what you're asking, Ms., and I agree. So regardless if it comes from the project fund or the operation and maintenance fund, I think we can. As they said, they have to bring it back anyway, but they want the authorization in order to get started with the work. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kruckenberg. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Okay. It's
Item approved, motion carries.
And yeah. but
10A,
this
personnel
is
for
that,
7/28/21.
ESSER money.
It is the recommendation that the Board of Education accept the administration's recommendation to approve the appointments, leave of absence, and accept the retirements and resignations as found on schedules F962, L909, and 761 and G620.
Mr. Riddle, I so move we approve this item as read.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
I am so sorry, I got distracted. We are voting on
Personnel.
Number 10A.
Personnel, Ms. Anna, 10A.
Yeah. I have some
Yes, she said yes.
reservations. but
Wait.
To move forward, yes.
Yes. Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We have some administrative appointments the superintendent would like to recognize.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve Carnes, who previously served as a principal in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who will now serve as a coordinator of pre-K-5 literacy with a starting salary of $107,000. Welcome, Dr. Carnes.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve Waukegan School District 60. Looking forward to an excellent year. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We would usually ask our new staff to come up and shake the board's hand, but due to COVID, we're going to just ask that you remain in your seats and we'll recognize you from there. Thank you for understanding. The next appointment is Stephanie Jemisek, who previously served as the assistant principal at Carmen Buckner Elementary School. She will now serve as the coordinator of MTSS and SEL with a starting salary of $80,579.20. Congratulations. Our next appointment is Meredith Kramer, who previously served as the assistant principal at our Washington campus. She will now become the academic chair of assessment and building logistics with a starting salary of $80,579.20. Our next appointment is Miss Rosanna Ortiz, who previously served as a teacher at Clearview Elementary and was recognized for a number of years of ensuring that 80% of her students met or exceeded their growth targets. And she's an excellent teacher, someone I look up to when I see her in the classroom, so I'm really excited about this. She will now serve as the assistant principal at Clark Elementary with a starting salary of $74,500. Congratulations. Our next appointment will be Miss Paulette Barnes, who previously served as a culture and climate specialist at AOEC. She will now serve as the assistant principal at Carmen Buckner with a starting salary of $74,500. Congratulations, Miss Barnes.
She's unable to be here because she's the family obligation or family obligation, but she wanted to make sure she
And Miss-
excited for her.
Miss Barnes is also alumni of Waukegan Public Schools.
Right. Wow. Great.
Our next appointment is Miss Jennifer Rice Dela Sanchez, who previously served as a principal of Whittier Elementary. She will now serve as Director of Teaching and Learning grades pre-K through 12 with a starting salary of $125,000. Congratulations, Miss Rice Dela Sanchez. Our last appointment will be Dr. Marcy Sorensen, who previously served as, or currently is serving as, the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning in Fort Worth, Texas. She will now serve as the new area superintendent with a starting salary of $147,000. Congratulations, Dr. Sorensen.
All right, welcome to all of those. I was excited, per usual, to see all of the new hires. And as with this time of year, also sad to see some of those names of people who are both retiring and have found work elsewhere. So I know that this remains a focus of the board to make sure that we are retaining talent as well as going out and recruiting new individuals to come. So I look forward to speaking in a couple weeks at our new beginnings, where I get to welcome our first year teachers, all those teachers who are new to Waukegan Public Schools. It's usually an exciting time. Generally happens further away in in August, but it's a reminder that the school year is fast upon us. So we are now moving down to 12 other. We have approval, facility rental waiver request for Waukegan College.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve fees pertaining to Waukegan College be retroactively waived. Waukegan College requested to use our facilities for their leadership retreat, which took place on July 22nd through July 24th. The total amount due for the reservation is $3,387.
A motion to approve as presented.
Motion by Ms. Gonzalez.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments or questions on the motion?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
So I noted this question when I believe the Beacon Place came to our organization. I'm going to ask the same question in regards to Waukegan College. Is there a way that our legal team or our school district can create some sort of multi-year agreement that goes along with this organization to say that we're going to waive fees for a lot of their annual things that they've already done with us for so many years? This is a partnership that we have with this organization, and I think that them coming for every single event that they have is more like red tape that we're putting up for them. So I'd like to see about removing that red tape and creating some sort of agreement between the two organizations to streamline, and then all they have to do is just meet a certain kind of contractual requirements, and then it just kind of goes through and allows the team to just approve. So just kind of talking into that.
Excuse me, if I may, we have started a dialogue with Mr. Moten around the facility use guidelines and manuals, which speaks to some of these issues and the fees, which historically I believe was in a policy document itself. So we are reviewing that, arising out of your request with Beacon Place. So we will add this to that conversation and come back with the recommendation to the board.
And do we need to get consensus from the board in regards to something like this, or?
Not to start the
Okay, not to start the
conversation.
okay.
I mean, we'd have to approve it if it came forward. All right, we are now at 12B. Oh, I'm sorry, we're still at 12A. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Conhan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, item approved, motion carries. All right, we are now at 12B, approval of facility rental waiver request for Community Action Partnership of Lake County.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approves fees pertaining to Community Action Partnership, CAP, of Lake County be waived. CAP of Lake County has requested to use our facilities for their back-to-school giveaway event, which will be held on July 31st and August 10th at Jack Benny Middle School. The total amount due for the reservation is $258.
A motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McBride, second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I would like to reiterate the same thing that Ms. Leguizamo recommended for Waukegan College for the community action, because they come to us often for rental waiver requests, and they are partners to the Waukegan School District. So,
We'll look at the issue for all entities that are coming on a regular basis. We'll look at the fee waiver history of those and come back with a recommendation.
Thank you. All right, we are now going down to reports.
We have to take the roll call.
Oh, sorry, roll call.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
yes.
Ms. Conhan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes, item approved, motion carries. All right, we are now at item, we're going to reports, and so we're down at, Ms. Anna has any delegates report?
Yes,
Mr. Ewing?
excited, I'm excited.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see it. That threw me off. You came in. I'm sorry, let's go back to our student board member report.
Because of the haircut.
So yeah, we're at item 14B, student board member report.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I actually don't have a lot to report. It's just one small thing, and I would say it's considered a complaint or some things that some students have said to me. It's actually about the schedule for high school students. It's not on. Basically students have said that they have not been able to check it on Infinite Campus, and some students have. And I asked students, "Oh, did you see the letter? You know, we get to see our schedule or pick it up at Washington Brookside campus," and they didn't even know about that. So the only thing that I'm trying to say is that we all know the school year will be different, and knowing the information beforehand, especially with schedules regarding what classes they will have, and if they want that class, so they can contact their counselor to change them. I think that should be definitely taken note of. Because I think that administrators and staff should definitely be on top of their game, which obviously they probably are. But I think that knowing how things will be, something should be announced earlier. But that's just all I have for now. Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good.
Could I ask a quick question to the student board member?
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Mr. Assam, do you know if your classmates prefer, is it email? I mean, are they checking emails? Or like, how would you kind of say from a student perspective, the best form of communication, especially not during school, right? Because, you know, no one's really going to check school items while we're not in school yet. Just getting your feedback on that.
So from what I've noticed and what has been done in the past is that usually students, including me, they tend to check their Infinite Campus, or for me personally, I would ask a teacher like, hey, you know, are the schedules out? You know, because even if they're not announced, I would ask and they would have it. And then what happens is some students like, oh, I got my schedule, and they would post it on Snapchat or Instagram, and it would kind of just spread like that. And then that's how it kind of spreads to a lot of students. Some students do check their emails, but honestly, a lot don't either. It's kind of mixed, but mostly social media is the way. I would say, yeah. That's how it spreads. Snapchat, Instagram, yeah.
Also, I have a question.
Thank you for that feedback.
I have a question as well.
I think we could, you want to go first? Anyway, I'm just gonna make a recommendation. We have these marquee boards. Sometimes they be blank. Maybe we can use our marquee board for it.
Thank you, Mr. McBride and Ms. Gonzalez.
Don't we have a text service for all of the parents and students in the district so that they get an update to check their Infinite Campus for schedules?
We do have a text service. I, as a mom, got a text today. So we readily do get them. I am having Dr. Nolt look into this, and we will get back to the board on this tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Board Member Sam. All right, we have delegates report, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, now let's start again. Excited! I would just like to report that I have received, well, the superintendent and I both received notification from the IASB that they have, that our resolution that was submitted regarding the science of reading and phonics is going before hopefully the delegates assembly. Right now I am awaiting a call to find out if I have to travel to Springfield and testify before the State Board of Education, or if they're going to let me do a Zoom meeting. So I am waiting for that, but that will be taking place on August 6th. So everybody, hopefully, you know, you guys say a prayer that that they vote to adopt, and once they vote to adopt, it goes to the delegates assembly during our Triple I conference in November. And once it goes through the delegates assembly, then it will then be advanced to Springfield and the legislation to vote on that resolution. And those of you that are interested in the resolution, it was on board docs, wasn't it?
Yes.
What wasn't it put
The
on?
resolution.
It was
Yeah.
on board docs, and so if you all are interested, you all can go back and look at the resolution. And excuse my typos and my potential errors, but it was more about the content of the material. So anyway, I'm waiting to hear from the state board to see which one we're going through. But other than that, that's all of the delegate report.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah, and congratulations. Ms. Placencia.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to ask my team to come up, and we are going to present on the support plan on how we will be welcoming our students back into their seats on August 12th. Dr. Knott, Mr. Alajakis, Mr. Moulton.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent, board members, community members, colleagues. So some of the information we're going to be presenting today is relevant to one of the agenda items in information. There's an agenda item about some of the health safety steps that we're taking as we move into the new school year. And so today we wanted to, with the help of Mr. Moulton, with Dr. Nault, we're going to be discussing items from a health and safety standpoint and also from an academic support standpoint that our students and our staff and our parents can come to expect beginning April 12th. So Lee, if you want to run us through the presentation, please. Thank you. So the philosophy of what we're going to be discussing from the health and safety standpoint is where we're starting. First of all, in-person learning is required. That's something that ISB announced earlier in the summer. It's something we've communicated to our parents a couple times, and we want to kind of just reiterate that. In-person learning is what the expectation is going to be, and we're going to do that while ensuring that we're taking priority and considering underlying safety measures. Also, some of the items we're going to be discussing, they're going to be aligning with CDC, IDPH guidelines. We also want to ensure, as we're moving along, we're going to be maintaining a lot of the things that we had in the spring, some of like the signage and some of the other health and safety compliance issues, and we're going to be doing some quarterly reviews. That's very important. They continue to review to see how things are working for us. If we can move on, please, Lee. So we want to start with face coverings, and I'm not going to go over everything here. You guys can kind of see it, but as we go through this presentation, what you're going to see is some items here kind of laying out how things were in in the last school year versus what you can expect for the upcoming school year. So one thing right now that's being proposed, that we're proposing, and the board will be reviewing it today and then doing a second reading later, is to maintain the mask requirement in our district and in our schools. Now there is a little bit of a difference in, for the outdoors. That's changed from the spring, obviously. You've seen some of the CDC guidance that's come out. And so we have a little bit of details in there, how that's changed. And then, we discussed some of the expectations. And one of the exceptions, would be if it's all staff, if you're in a room, if everyone's vaccinated and there's an agreement, then unmasking would be permitted in those instances. Next slide, please. Lee, next one, physical distancing, as everyone might recall, in the spring, the big thing was 6 feet. being reduced, as you've seen some of the guidance from the CDC, down to 3 feet, and it breaks it down there how that's going to be. There is still that 6 foot, we're still recommending 6 foot between unvaccinated staff and other staff and students. Unvaccinated students will be permitted at 3 feet, and obviously 3 feet will be, if if you're vaccinated, the 3 feet will be in place. Next slide, please. Hygiene, not much has changed. It's very, very similar in terms of how we're going to review the expectations, the hand washing, things like that. The expectation that hand sanitizer is going to be available. Our district is going to be we're continuing to make hand sanitizer readily available in our hallways, around our classrooms, to the students and staff at all times. And we'll continue, as you see there, the sharing of equipment and how that's going to work. Next slide, please. PPE, a lot of the same things. What you'll see is that the vaccination status and personnel and their personal risk may be considered in terms of the distribution of PPE to whether they need anything enhanced. But you could read some of that again in the policy that's coming forward. Next, health and mental, health. And this has to do with when people are encouraged to stay home. And so one thing, if you're asked to stay home if you have signs of an infectious illness. Before, that was kind of the COVID symptoms. Now, if you have any signs of an infectious illness. Also at the bottom, in terms of mental health, this is a big thing now, and Ms. Vanderbroek can speak to it. It's a requirement that we provide that the National Suicide Lifeline and the crisis line, that number on students' IDs, where students have the IDs. So when they look at their IDs, they look on the back of the IDs, that have that information. That's going to be very important for some of the mental health aspects as we move forward. Next slide. Testing. This is a big one that I know a lot of people are interested in. So we are working to establish screening testing within the schools, and it's going to kind of be in one of 3 ways. 1, students and staff with COVID symptoms. They would be a part of it. 2, unvaccinated students and staff who are determined to be close contacts. 3, vaccinated asymptomatic close contacts. And that's tentative. We're still working out the details on that in the proposal. And then also, in there, again, that last part is tentative, and it would be the rapid testing is what the testing would be, and should somebody test positive, then it would graduate on to beyond that. Next slide. Contact tracing, you'll see there in the second bullet point under 2122 how that's going to be different and how that's going to be triggered for considering some of the vaccination status. The following slide, vaccines, that's something that we're going to continue to push. We've been pushing throughout the summer, reminding our staff, reminding our students, our parents, the importance of getting a vaccine. We know it's ultimately their choice, but we're strongly encouraging it. It's going to be significant. It's going to be very helpful for us as a school district to have as many vaccinated bodies in our district as possible. And so we're going to continue to do what we can. You'll see there on the left all the numerous clinics that we either hosted or we've partnered with districts or health organizations to host. We want to continue that as we move into the fall. I mean, just this weekend during our Back to School Resource Fair, we're going to be offering vaccines at People's Choice Family Fun Center. That's something we've set up with the Lake County Health Department. And so we're going to continue to do this. We're going to, particularly at the middle schools, to encourage the vaccination of our students, to make it easy for our parents to come into a place that they know, to a place where they're comfortable, so they could receive that vaccine. And should we receive the emergency authorization for younger students, age 5 to 12, we're going to do the same thing at our elementary schools. We want to keep pushing and pushing as much as we can because we know how important that is. Ventilation, you'll see there, we're continuing with upgrades and enhancements district-wide. There was things that had been done since spring of 2020, and we're continuing that. We know the importance of that for helping to stop the spread. Beyond that, cleaning and disinfecting. One thing, we are going to see a little bit more of a return to the normal cleaning practices that we're used to. However, they'll continue to be heightened cleaning and sanitation of areas. In the spring, there was sort of a different structure that our maintenance and staff kind of took in the buildings in terms of how they were handling the buildings. And so we're going to return back more to a normal one, but there's going to still be increased emphasis on cleaning those touch points and everything of that nature. Building access, and so this is another big one. This has to do, what you'll see there is screenings. So the screenings that, hold on, I want to make sure I'm talking about the right one. And somebody feel free to jump in, Kathy or LeBaron, if I'm on the wrong one here. Okay, no, that's correct. So we're going to be, this is the screenings. Everybody knows the Crisis Go screenings that we're taking every day for our staff, our students. That, once, if the board approves it, we're going to move away from that and go back to our previous way of, so you will not need to do those screenings every day anymore. That's something that's being proposed. You'll see in terms of should people need, if somebody is considered a close contact or if they're having to quarantine, students will have that opportunity for remote learning if they're unable to be vaccinated and they're required to be to quarantine. That's kind of the procedure that's been put in place by the Illinois Department of Public Health. That's the guidance that we received from them. And then discussions for staff and that remote working is still being, those discussions are ongoing. Next one, visitors and how we're going to handle that. Assuming that we remain in that low community spread, which is like the blue, we're going to continue with our pre-COVID procedures, the things that you would have seen in March 2020 and prior. If we get to the high level, which we've seen certain areas hit, we'll start to pull that back. And that's the constant evaluation that we're going to be doing. Travel, field trips, they're allowed when community spread in Waukegan or the destination is in that blue phase, and it's at the discretion. We're going to take some discretion should it rise above that, and the non-essential travel discouraged. But we are going to always encourage to consider the CDC or IDPH travel advisories. If there's an advisory in an area, we're going to strongly discourage the travel to that area. Obviously, transportation, occupancy is not going to be restricted as it was for Illinois Central. Pace riders, the occupancy is not going to be restricted for them as well. And the face mask, that's going to continue. That's a transportation rule. And we failed to mention that on an earlier slide. Face coverings are required on transportation nationally, I believe. And so buses will still continue to require that. The cleaning of the buses will continue to, the enhanced cleaning of buses will continue to occur. And pay-to-ride applications will be accepted again. That's something that we discontinued last year. Parents are going to have that option to do that again. Food service, it's going to be a lot of the pre-COVID procedures. So things you saw before March 2020 in our schools, the bus stop and the drive-through will move to a weekend distribution, and weekend distribution will be discontinued, and then the breakfast in the classroom program is going to be utilized just to ensure students are getting that nutrition that they need, and fresh fruit and veggies program will continue. So that's what we have from a health and safety standpoint, and a lot of that information is, as we mentioned, going to be in the policy under information items. Ms. Vanderbroek, Mr. Moulton can speak to those items much more intelligently than I can, so if you have questions for any one of us, I'm sure we'll be happy to take them. I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Nault, who's going to run us through some of the academic standpoints that are going to be very important as August 12th approaches.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, everyone. Again, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board. Up here this evening on behalf of Dr. Cesario and the entire academics team, presenting our D60 support plan. This is something that we've been talking about for an extended period of time now, kind of really digging into what school is going to look like when we do return. So we spend a lot of time and energy thinking about this and collaborating across departments, collaborating across divisions, and really coming up with a solid plan that, as you'll see, is really going to focus on three key areas as we begin the new year. Next slide, please. So our objectives for the presentation is to share information with the board related to our support plan as we transition into this new school year, share the connection and impact of some of the mental health resources that are going to be available, the academic supports that are going to be available, and highlight some of the partnerships that will assist with the post-COVID transition plan this year. Excuse me as I go through my paper here. The creation of this plan provides guidance and support to our school-based staff, our parents, our students, and the entire D60 community as we adjust to the post-COVID school setting. As I mentioned, the three major components of this plan are really focusing on mental health supports, academic supports, and minor adjustments to the school day. And when I say minor adjustments to the school day, I'm not talking about changing schedules or changing hours or anything like that. Just simple things that we can do during the course of a school day to make get kids more up and moving, engaged in some of the learning activities. And we'll go through those shortly. Next slide, please. In terms of the mental health supports, next slide, please. One more. There we go. In terms of mental health supports, this is something that, as you know, we've been focusing on pretty much since March of 2020. This is something that I think a lot of districts have found that they perhaps were underutilizing in their schools, and there's been a re-emphasis on the mental health of students and staff in our buildings. So some of the supports that you'll see in terms of in-school supports that are provided by the district, our school psychologists, our social workers, our speech language pathologists, nurses, counselors. We have some SEL counselors that are being onboarded. Internally, we also have MTSS specialists, we have behavior specialists, external specialists that we're providing a lot of our internal supports. So those are people that are obviously employed by our district, working in schools every day. From the external standpoint, we have recently the board just approved another renewal for Asian Human Services. They'll be providing in-school supports to our students as well and staff. There's going to be a forthcoming presentation, as you know, on BAM and WOW and the potential that those organizations can bring to the schools. We have, throughout this process and through conversations with President Ewing, we've discussed the need to reorient our principals, our teachers, our parents, our students on these programs and the services that they provide, so they have a better understanding of what it is that these supports will provide our classrooms. From the SEL standpoint, the district has an SEL framework. We have our Calm Classroom strategy we're going to be implementing, Second Step. There's a Panorama playbook, which is part of our SEL toolkit as well, that we're going to be utilizing for all those student supports. Next slide. From a parent's perspective, as it relates to SEL, there's some toolkits that we put together for parents, and we put these together during the pandemic, and we're just going to continue to re-emphasize the importance of these toolkits for parents. Parents in SEL 101, there's a bank full of resources that parents can acquire, and toolkits that parents can acquire as well. As mentioned previously, we do have an SEL framework that's broken down by grade band. We have a pre-K to 2 SEL framework, a 3 to 5 SEL framework that can be utilized by principals and teachers, and a 6 to 12 SEL framework as well. So a lot of emphasis again on the mental health and social emotional well-being of our students. Next slide. Continuing on, again, we mentioned that for us to think, I think it would be highly naive for us to feel that we can just come back August 12th and hit the ground running like this is a traditional regular school year. So we find the need to really, again, orient students to coming back to school. They've been out for over a year and a half. They've been sitting, in front of computers. They haven't been interacting with their peers as much. Maybe more recently they have, but for a good portion of the last 18 months, they've really been isolated. So we feel there's a huge need for us to really orient students to what school is going to be like, kind of build up that academic stamina that they're going to need to go back to school full time, 5 days a week, and really, again, just come up with activities that are going to re-engage them in school. Again, trying to avoid that traditional welcome back to school, come in the classroom, sit down, get 6 hours of instruction, go to lunch, and kind of break that up a little bit and provide some additional activities for students. Emphasize the importance of building relationships not only with their peers but with their staff and teachers. Engage students in a lot of non-academic activities. Provide opportunities for physical activity and movement and breaks during the course of the day and in the classroom. And I'll get into more details about what that looks like in a moment. But just really thinking outside of the box about how we can re-engage kids with learning back in our schools is really kind of one of our main points of emphasis in this process. In terms of the, next slide please, Lee, thank you. Academic supports and resources that are available. Utilizing universal screeners within our classrooms to identify some skill gaps in the areas of math and reading, ELA. Identify areas of intervention and support for progress monitoring. One example of this is the FastBridge program that we have that's going to help us determine math fluency, ELA fluency, comprehension, some of those skills that we know students may have fallen behind a little bit on during the pandemic, so reiterating some of those. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, you're there. Measuring students' mastery priority standards. Prioritizing limited instructional time on the lessons and skills that matter most. Redesigning what small group instruction looks like to target students with underlying skill deficits. And tutoring to provide additional skill-based support. As you know, we've already presented a couple tutoring programs to the board. One was recently approved, TutorMate, so we're excited about that partnership, and we are exploring other tutoring options to meet the needs of all grade levels as we move into this next school year. Common interim and assessments and performance-based assessments. So this is going to be critical data for us, and this is part of our ongoing curriculum writing work that's been taking place the last 2 or 3 years in the district. We're at a point now where we have common interim assessments that have been developed on grades K to 5. So using that data to help us measure some of the literacy and reading and writing standards and how those are being taught in the classrooms and how students are acquiring those standards, using performance-based assessments in science and social studies and other content areas to also give us some data about where students currently stand. All these data points are going to provide us outside of the traditional formative assessments that teachers give in the classrooms. These data points are going to give us some really great benchmarks and to really help us dig in and figure out what are some of the deficits and gaps that our students are experiencing and allow us to adjust instruction as we go. Next slide. In terms of professional development, prior to the start of this school year, all pre-K through 8 teachers have or will have received GLAD training by the first day of school. GLAD is our guided language acquisition training for teachers and that helps them support the learning of ELL students in our district. And there's certain strategies that GLAD focuses on. One for sure is peer interaction, visuals in the classroom, movement within the classroom. So they have what's called a TPR, total physical response, that's embedded in the daily instruction that provides students to have movement embedded into their learning. And that's part of the things that we were talking about is important. Again, is just getting kids to reconnect with each other, reestablish relationships, get them up moving, get them re-engaged, being strategic about how we're building in some of these things into the daily classroom. So students can acclimate more quickly to being back in school full time. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, tutoring is a huge part of this, our academic support plan for this year. TutorMate is going to be providing tutoring in all of our kindergarten classrooms in year 1. Year 2, TutorMate will be expanding to our kindergarten in 1st grade, and then year 3, TutorMate will be going kindergarten 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We are exploring, as I mentioned earlier, options for all grade levels to provide tutoring in class as well as virtually. And of course, we know that principals will also have on-site tutoring opportunities for students as well, where they'll be utilizing their own staff to provide tutoring to. So tutoring is going to be a huge portion of our support plan. And if you look at what other districts are doing as well, a lot of districts are investing in tutoring at this point. They realize the research that supports how tutoring can really help districts make up some of those learning gaps that existed and get students back on grade level much more quickly. So tutoring is going to be a key portion of this. Next slide, please. Executive functioning is another area of focus. If you recall from our summer school presentation and program that we implemented this summer, executive functioning was a huge part of our curriculum. So really giving students explicit instruction and practice on skills that they need help with for everyday tasks. Skills like planning, organization, time management, metacognition, self-control, attention, etc. These are all executive functioning skills that, believe it or not, students learn those skills when they're in classroom settings, with teachers, with their peers, when they're in common areas of the building, the cafeteria, and the hallways. They learn these skills a lot of times. So the fact that our students have been out of some of these settings for a while, not only did we re-emphasize them in our summer program, but we're going to re-emphasize them again when they come back this fall. And without those kinds of skills, students can definitely have troubles focusing. They can have troubles managing their emotions, following directions. So we understand the importance of embedding these things into our daily lessons in our schools to once again kind of create that stamina and that grit that students need to just get back into the habit of doing school. Next slide. In terms of adjustments to the school day, physical well-being, classroom physical activity can benefit students in a variety of ways. First and foremost, improving their concentration and ability to stay on task, improving their motivation and engagement in the learning process, helping to improve their academic performance, increasing the amount of daily physical activity they have not only outside not only during recess and in PE, but just in general throughout the course of the day in the building as well. So really thinking about our students' overall physical well-being and how we can, again, adapt some of the things that we're doing on a daily basis to get them more engaged and on task and motivated to be back in school. Next slide. In terms of some sample schedules, if you think about this from an elementary, middle, and high school perspective, during the elementary school, they don't switch classes. They have the same teacher pretty much most of the day, so having some natural transitions in there when they transition from maybe math to English, the teacher doing something outside of the box, giving students some kind of a mini brain break, if you will, or some kind of activity that they can do as they transition. Research suggests that within 7 to 10 minutes, usually you have to provide students, especially this generation, because they're so focused on getting instant results and instant gratification through technology and through cell phones and everything else, that every 7 to 10 minutes you should be trying to re-engage students in content. So our plan is, again, to create, look at some of these natural transitions that exist in the classroom, and give teachers and principals suggestions and input on how activities they can do in the classroom to utilize that time more effectively to help get students moving, up and moving. At the middle school level, between the class periods, having breaks built into the class periods, maybe once in the beginning of the class when kids first get in there. I know we have a calm classroom strategy that we use where kids do some breathing exercises and they kind of get themselves, it's almost like a meditation where they get themselves relaxed and calm before they start instruction. So continuing now with some of those strategies, perhaps in the middle of the class, if it's a 50-minute period, giving kids an opportunity to get up during the middle of that period and again, take a small break and interact with each other and do some activities at the middle school. And again, we're going to, sky's the limit here. Teachers are very good at this kind of stuff. Teachers are very creative when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we're not going to prescribe elementary teachers to do X, Y, or Z, or middle school teachers to do X, Y, or Z. We're just going to encourage them to come up with creative ways within their own classrooms to do this on their own. At the high school level, again, including some kind of a focus activity at the beginning of the period, provide times for students in class to stand, interact with each other halfway through the period as well. So again, just getting that physical activity and that re-engagement with each other is important. One strategy or one example that we purchased was a program called Go Noodle. And essentially what Go Noodle is a library of videos that are really like short bursts of exercises that kids can do in a classroom. So that's a platform that we're going to be using this year for students that can, going to give teachers opportunities for students to get up and move, teach explicit mindfulness skills, manage their emotions. It boosts students' confidence, provides them with opportunities, again, for peer-to-peer connections. So there's hundreds of videos that they can pick from that, again, will just get kids interacting with each other, up and moving around in the classroom, and breaking up some of the minutia of those longer periods. This next slide really, thank you. The next slide really just speaks to some of the, again, more examples from Go Noodle. There's a Fresh Start fitness channel. There's Empower tools that they can use for yoga and mindfulness activities. There's a dancing content like NTV. There's games that they can play where one of the games called Think on Your Feet, and those kinds of things. So giving teachers options of things that they can do with students in the classroom. Next slide. Recess. So outside of the traditional recess, providing additional mini recess breaks for students that are in grades K to 5, maybe a 10-minute break within the classroom. This also supports the KIDS assessment, which focuses on play-based learning and gross fine motor skills for our kindergarten students, and just having really structured activities that provide skills on taking turns and communicating and those kinds of things at recess, again, to reinforce some of those executive functioning skills that we know our students need some more development on. Classroom movement. Engaging teachers to intentionally plan for movement breaks within the lessons, as I've mentioned. Make it purposeful and integrated into the curriculum. Make it short and easy. There's a wide variety of things you can do. There's gallery walks, there's jigsaw activities, there's four corners, there's think, pair, and share, where they can connect with a colleague and share their ideas and thoughts on a certain topic. So there's a lot of different things that they can do, but again, just reinforcing and reiterating the importance of classroom movement in the class and getting kids engaging with each other in different ways. Last slide, sensory breaks. This is built in the national structure of the school day. Again, sensory breaks allow kids to maintain focus. It allows them to maintain their attention and enhances learning. Essentially just giving kids a brain break in between lessons as they need one. Brain breaks will be provided, brain break books, say that 3 times, will be provided to all classrooms in our schools. So they'll have that resource that they can tap into if they're struggling with sensory breaks. Next slide. I think that is it. That is it. Thank you so much.
So I'm sorry, before you go, I got just a quick couple questions. Apologies.
No problem.
So if we say mental health is a priority,
Mhm.
one of the things that I've been a big proponent of is the addition of social workers, right? So how are we going to ensure if we bring in AHS, BAM, WOW, and the social workers that the students who need the service are being serviced? And have we looked at increasing the number of social workers? And then as far as counselors, my question that I have from watching that is I know that we recently lost quite a few counselors, so I don't know if that's something that we can report. I don't think Mr. Figueroa is still in here, but where are we at with replacing the counselors who who have recently resigned?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the second question, Mr. President Ewing, but in terms of the first question, I know part of that reorientation that we talked about with Asian Human Services and some of these other groups is, really laying out clear expectations for how they are going to collaborate with some of our internal supports that we already have, including the social workers, the counselors, the psychologists. And, from the reports that were given this past year around Asian Human Services, I think there were some counselors, AHS counselors, that did a really good job collaborating with those in-house people at different sites, and there were some that could definitely improve that area. For us, when we look at this, when it comes to Asian Human Services and all mental health supports, we're trying to create as many options for students as possible. So we know social workers have huge caseloads. We know counselors have huge caseloads that it's almost impossible for them to connect with all the students that need connecting with. So when we pursue organizations like AHS and these others, for us, we're at the heart of it, we're trying to maximize the bandwidth that we can provide to students in terms of support. So if a social worker is just overburdened, has too many students, that maybe AHS can help pick up some of those supports, or they can tag team and help, especially if there's a family issue going on. So utilizing all the resources that we have at our disposal is kind of our strategy and our goal, knowing that our clinicians are severely overtaxed as it is. But I think to really answer your question, and this is part of our framework for success, is that collaboration and that cohesion is extremely important. And understanding how these, when we bring in all these different partners and we bring in these other people to support the work that we're doing in the district, how does that work from a collaboration standpoint, and being very clear about what our expectations are with them when it comes to collaborating with our internal supports.
And I just want to piggyback on, I got a couple questions and then I'll go to the board, so everybody will get the opportunity, but I want to follow up with something that you said and piggyback on the conversation that we had with Ms. Gonzalez, is as we're bringing in individuals to support like AHS and BAM and WOW, that we're also building our internal capacity. And so if we're at a situation where social workers are underworked, then I would recommend, in addition to those other supports, we also increase the number of social workers. So I just want to make sure that as we go into budget talks next week, that's something that we're looking at, because where your budget is, they're your priorities. And so if we are saying that we are prioritizing mental health, then I want to make sure that we're not just bringing in external partners, but we're building the capacity of our internal talent. And so our social workers and our counselors are two areas that the board, the 4 years that I've been here, have been saying that we need not just to increase the numbers, but also the output. So that was kind of where I have is, if we're saying mental health is a priority, let's try and, through the budget conversation next week, ensure that we're putting the resources where they need to go. And then I just want to, and this is my last question before I go to the board, I want to make sure that I understand the role of MTSS. As we put that in the slides, that the role of MTSS was to, was it internal support?
Yeah, yes. Our NPSS specialists, yes. Our
And
our
that's
form
a-
of internal support, yep.
And that's internal support to educators, to teachers, principals, right?
Yep,
They're not,
they're in the schools, yep.
they're not working directly with students though, and I just want to confirm that difference.
They work with schools to help them implement our MTSS process.
But not working direct, like they're not doing small group,
No,
they're not meeting.
they're
with
they're
students.
a
That's-
part of team meetings, they're a part of the implementation of the interventions at the school.
Yep.
Now, they can have conversations with, like I said, teacher teams and that kind of thing to get them all on the same page in terms of strategies and decision rules that are in place about when kids are moving from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. Those kind of things are involved in that, but they're not working directly with students necessarily.
Thank
Hannah.
you. So now I'm going to Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. McBride, and then Ms. Hannah. Ms. Gonzalez?
I just have there are more financial questions, because I know that we had approved a contract to extend Crisis Goals, contract up until I think December, so, since we're not gonna be using it or requiring it for our staff and students, I wondered if, we're gonna pay it out anyway. I know that's the nature of the contract. So that was my first question, and then the second question was, I know that we're using TutorMate, but I don't know if it was a May meeting. Someone named, I believe Miss Tate, had applied for a grant to do district-wide tutoring. Do we know anything about that grant or that project? I can't remember the full name of the grant, but I know it was Miss Tate.
Was it the 21st Century Stars grant?
It must have
Has
been
a
that,
component
yeah.
of tutoring? Okay.
Yeah, tutoring was okay, yes, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Tutoring was a component of the 21st Century Stars grant application process. It's a requirement that schools, if we're awarded the grant, that there's an after-school tutoring component built into that project.
Yeah. So
Coupled by enrichment activities after the tutoring. So the kids have to do the academic tutoring piece first,
Right.
and then they get to do the fun stuff, so to speak, after that.
Yeah.
We don't know the
where
status of that grant yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we don't know the status of that grant
I
yet.
just wanted to see a follow-up on that, but thank you.
Yeah, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Moten for the crisis go question.
Thank you, Dr. Nault. So thank you for the question. So you are correct. We did ask the board to approve a 6-month extension for Crisis Go for the safety iPass component. We did that because we didn't know what our implementation was going to be for the upcoming year. So we wanted to have that security because we had built that system and that database specifically for our district. Now, I don't recall if Mr. Alajakis mentioned this earlier, but what we have committed to do as part of this review is to review this and some of the changes that are being recommended after the first quarter, particularly as some of the metrics, if we do see a rise in cases around us and we need to re-implement some of these metrics and some of these measures, we're going to do that after the first quarter, and that was recommendations based on our pandemic preparedness team as well as other district staff and administration as we went through and did this review and we saw that things were changing. Some of these recommendations have changed as recently as yesterday, July 27th.
Yeah.
So we're back in that mode where we're checking these things daily. So we did acquire that. We are responsible to pay for that 6 months, but we're recommending not implementing at the start of the year, but after the first quarter, if we need to re-implement it, we will.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Can
Moore.
I-
And
can
Dr.
I-
Knight.
I said Ms. McBride next. You
Right,
said you got
but I
one more?
wanted to piggyback on the crisis goal.
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Just so that it's coordinated. Mr. Moten, the crisis goal, procedure, process, protocol, we first brought that into the district for active shooters, right? And we're still going to have that for the active shooters, the Alice, all of that, because that was what it was brought into the district originally for. And so shouldn't there be, I asked at a previous board meeting about getting the screening machines that we put at the high school for all of our students because of the issue that the challenges that we were having during the summer in getting students into the classroom on time because of the screening with that crisis goal. And so, did you all even look at that?
Yes, we looked several times, and thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. We looked several times because we were anticipating what were the scenarios where we would come back for this fall. What are the scenarios as far as occupancy and the amount of students that may be coming back? So with all the students returning and what the trends were telling us over the summer, we recommended not continuing that implementation of that program. But we did look at options. We're always looking at options to help streamline that process because we don't want students standing outside for an hour just to get into school to learn.
Right.
As far as your question regarding the crisis management piece, we still have that function. We still utilize it for emergency contacts, to verify attendance measures for students if we need to do a reunification of things of that nature. So the only portion we asked the board to approve and extend for 6 months was the safety iPass for self-certification. The other functions of the program that we utilize are going to remain intact, and they are updated and current as we go into the next school year.
And did you all look at the machines that you have at the high school? The temperature reading machines for our middle and elementary schools? Because that's what I was talking about.
Okay, so if you're referring to we purchased new metal detectors with the scanning function, temperature sensing function. The high schools and AOEC are the only locations where we have that equipment. We do not have that equipment at the elementary and middle
I know.
schools. So we did not explore the option to add metal detectors at the elementary and middle schools for student and staff access as part of a regular routine, if that's what you're asking.
That kind of disturbs me because it was like a board member requested for you all to look into that, and it was kind of just like, flung in the air and not even thought about.
So
We're moving on. Come on.
So I
Mr.
did just
McBride.
want to clarify, we did consider all options and avenues, but I just want to remind everybody for clarity that the temperature screening, scanning process that's on the metal detectors was an added feature that we acquired. We needed to update our metal detector devices in general, and that is the primary function of those devices. It's not solely for scanning temperatures. And that feature is not going to be utilized as part of this new self-certification process coming in the fall.
Mr. McBride?
I just want to kind of reiterate what Brandon brought up, the idea of counselors. And as you said, they do have quite a bit of caseload.
I don't think your mic's working, Mr. McBride.
I was saying I just want to bring up, reiterate what Brandon was saying in reference to counselors. As you was doing in your presentation, you're correct. The counselors do have a caseload considering the amount of students we have in our district. And it's been requested sometime back in the past that we need more counselors because of crises that take place in our buildings, and then also those crises carry out into the community. And myself, as well as individuals that look like me, we generally mourn behind those different crises that take place, and it starts in the building. And I think that if we had counselors to be able to intervene when they see things, mental issues that's going on with our kids, and trouble and emotions and difficulties that they're having, we can nip some of these things in the bud instead of having to deal with it later once they leave out of our building. Because we the first line of defense when we come to seeing our kids and what's going on with them. Then the parents actually give them to us for almost 8 hours a day. So I'm saying to you that we need more counselors. That's the bottom line to it. And hopefully what I'm saying and Brandon is saying is not falling on deaf ears. And it has fell on deaf ears for a while prior to my time sitting on this school board. And then at some point, some of the difficulties that I've experienced, that I think we can nip some of that in the bud if we had the right resources for our kids in the buildings.
I agree. The price of counselors, social workers, school psychologists, it's invaluable. The national, I'm going to mess this up, the ASCA model for counseling, I can't remember, American School Counseling Association, I think, recommends a counselor for every 250 students in buildings. So that's the national standard or expectation from ASCA. Most districts obviously have a very difficult time meeting that standard. Number one, because of the staffing shortages in general, but number two, it's just funding, of course.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm not interested in what national is gonna say. I'm interested in what goes on around me every day that I see with kids being put out of school, expulsions, fights, paraphernalia, smoking in and out of the buildings, and then in terms of I see these same students. I'm going to funerals every day, but at the same time, I'm saying some of this stuff we can nip at the bud within the building before it reaches the community. That's all I'm
100%.
saying. So whatever we have to do by any means necessary, if we have to, instead of 250, maybe we need to get some counselors to cover maybe half of that.
No,
I know the high school.
What
I'm
I
sorry,
want to
Mr.
say,
Neal.
Dr. Nault, is just, would you have the statistic of how many counselors we have per student?
I don't know the numbers offhand. I know the high school, Washington campus today interviewed 4 counselors. Brookside interviewed 3 the day before for some vacancies that they have. I don't know the exact numbers that we have in the district.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we can come back to the board with that. But we also just want to reiterate to the board that we believe that it's necessary that we are not only offering these services during school time, that we're going to have to expand it due to the pandemic. So we're looking at how do we offer counseling in the morning, in the evenings, and on Saturday, but not only to our students, how do we offer family counseling so that we can ensure that we're building that bridge back to the home. So yes, our social workers and our counselors are crucial, and we will go back and look at those numbers and bring back a plan and let you know exactly where we are with that. We will bring that back as early as our next board meeting to the board so that you can see that in real time.
Thank you.
Ms. Hannah?
Yeah, going back to your social emotional, okay, and about BAM and about Asian Human Services. Okay, now I know that I had some concerns regarding the reports that were given to us in terms of the progress that those agencies had sent to us, right? But I'm just wondering, okay, they are a separate entity, right? BAM and Asian Human Services. Okay. And so we are not monitoring them. And why, if they're providing social emotional support, why not put them under the social work umbrella, and therefore there would be monitoring of their activities so that when the board asks for data, we can get more than the hours that they gave to us, okay? I don't know if you all have discussed that, okay? But Ms. Dotson is more qualified to have those agencies where she can monitor and see what they're doing, okay? And I don't see, I'm hoping that you all had the foresight to think about that, because I mean we can't just give people $400 and some thousand for one group and then 1.6 million for another group, and nobody in our school district is monitoring them. That doesn't even make professional sense. And so hopefully you all are going to ask Ms. Dotson as the certified, qualified social worker to monitor these people, and so that we'll know what they're doing.
As a reminder to the board, we are going to be presenting the BAM again in the WOW at an upcoming board meeting to you all. Remember a couple weeks ago it was held over for a future meeting, so those presentations will be forthcoming. To answer your question, Ms. Hannah, yes, it is an external organization that are in our schools working with our students. Currently, they're oversaw by the building principal, and if you do recall, there was one particular counselor who had some performance concerns where the principal collaborated with BAM to remove the individual from the school. So they are being I guess, supervised.
Okay, but I understand that, sir. But the principal has other major duties to perform. I'm just saying, okay, you know, I mean, we should categorize and group things, centralize things in the proper place. And that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Thank you for your opinion, Ms. Hannah, and we'll take that in consideration.
Yeah, I understand.
I think that's district-wide work of how the principals like that hands-on approach with supervising what's in their building. They're little CEOs. I mean, not little CEOs. They are CEOs of their building. They have many projects. They have to ensure that they're aligned systematically to support the needs of their buildings, and they're the ones that know their buildings the best. But we will take what you said into consideration.
And in terms of reporting, again, anything that the board is looking for in terms of data reporting that you want Asian Human Services, which is currently the only organization that we have a partnership with, to provide, please let me know, and they would be more than willing to provide it. I can share with them what the board is requesting, and we can get hours, we can get numbers of students, we can get minutes, we can get, you know, whatever it is that the board is looking for, we can request that from them.
Ms. Wozniak?
In all of this, are we going to get an update on on the health clinic, including the mental health clinic portion of it? Is that?
I know
still
there's
on
been
the
an ongoing
plans?
conversation with an organization about a mental health clinic. Dr. Cesaro has been leading that discussion. I have not been a part of it, so I don't feel comfortable kind of speaking on the status of where we are with that at the moment.
I can assist. We will be coming back to the board with more information on that, but I do want the board to know that we are looking at how do we partner with an organization. I don't publicly want to say the organization yet because they have not committed as of yet, but we are moving in a positive trend to bringing that to Waukegan Public Schools. So the board will be receiving more information on that later.
In a month, 2 months?
I'm hoping at the next student achievement meeting in August.
Okay, thank you.
If the details are worked out by then. Ms. Callahan Wozniak.
Ms. Leguizamo? And then, for the sake of time, I know we had other board members. We also received a lengthy reply today, so I want to let Ms. Leguizamo, and then unless Mr. Riddle had any questions, then we can move on. Ms. Leguizamo?
2 questions. So going back to mental health, right? You talked about having these reconnection series. And I just wanted to kind of get some clarification. Is that going to be something like the beginning of the school year, like for like 1 week, 1 day, a month, or is that going to be like broken out each quarter, the first week of each quarter? So I'm just wondering how consistent is that reconnection going to be in throughout our school year?
Our goal, this is our support plan for the year. So our goal is to implement these strategies related to mental health and SEL for the entirety of the year. So there isn't a timeline or a time frame when we're going to move away from these supports. We're going to continue to provide as many supports as possible as long as our students need it. So there isn't a specific time frame, and when we envision that these supports are going to go away, of course we'll evaluate quarterly or even more often about how things are going and the effectiveness of some of the things that we're doing. Of course we'll do that, but there isn't a set timeline on the expiration of these supports.
So this is also at the discretion of the building then, right? So there could be a building out there that could not implement this type of program.
The expectations that are going to be shared from the academics department through our area superintendents to the principals is that these things are in place. And of course, they'll be monitored by the area superintendents that work with the principals as well. So there'll be some progress monitoring and implementation foresight that'll be taking place throughout the course of the year with this.
Okay.
I
yeah,
also want to remind the board that this is our plan, right? But we have not seen our students in a year and a half. We did have a small amount of students for hybrid, and I'm going to say this because I met with our principals today, and their main priority right now is just to ensure that we're transitioning our kids back into our buildings, and they know that. They are aware that I have said this publicly, that we're going to give them times and supports. They don't know what to expect when they walk in.
Right.
Those kids that had faced trauma previously that were at-risk students have been even more at risk now coming back into our buildings, right? And that population may have completely changed and have grown. So right now, the principals, once our students come in, they will assess where they're at, and we have committed to them to revisit their plans at the semester break to give them more supports in the areas that are needed. But first, we need to get our kids back in the seats to see exactly where we're at that time. Right now, we are just setting hypothesis to something that we really don't know and our nation does not know as of yet. So please be aware that this plan may be tweaked. It's going to come. I will state, though, based off how I see the guidelines come from CDC and just even in a response that we received from Ms. Vanderbroek, we seem to be not aligned, but when we make our decisions, we seem to be in sync with them. And so that's a good thing because it shows us that we are on the right path. However, like I said, there's so many variables that we just do not know, and we have to be comfortable in not knowing until we are able to assess it.
Perfect. And this question would be for Mr. Moulton. So I know, give you a little break, Dr. Nault. So, Mr. Moulton, as you talked a little bit, or it was described a little bit in the presentation about the ventilation. Last year, we had recognized a few rooms that did not have proper ventilations, and therefore we closed those rooms down. Can you tell me what that looks like in this upcoming school year? Have we amended those problems area, created ventilation, will reopen them, or will they remain closed?
Sure, thank you for the question. One of those locations was actually identified previously on the agenda at Washington campus. So what we're doing, yes, we have amended those locations and we've put in measures. I do, in the locations that shouldn't be utilized for poor ventilation, such as a modified closet that may be an office space or a classroom, we still are requesting those locations do not be utilized for this school year. I would like to remind everybody that the HVAC is part of the ESSER 3 survey, as well as some initiatives by the district, whether it be the capital improvement plan or maybe the new Johnson Controls cooperative purchasing program that we brought to the board last month. Those situations are always ongoing and always enhancements. We want to make sure that spaces are properly ventilated for occupancy. So spaces such as this, yes, they can be occupied. If there is a location, like I said, that was not originally intended and designed to be an occupied space per its original construction, or any new spaces that need to be updated, we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to further do it to spaces because we know the schools need the space. One specific example, and I just want to put this out, and I know Mr. Kruckerberg is no longer here, but Robbie Lightfoot. So Robbie Lightfoot is a newer facility as far as it being remodeled. However, there was a location in the school that Ms. Session, the principal, said she needed to utilize that was not constructed to be an occupied space because there was no ventilation. So we updated that so they could utilize that space because it was a sizable square footage. They needed it to spread out. So that's just one example. That did not exist prior to the pandemic, but as we've gone through and evaluated these spaces and added additional spaces that were not previously intended to be occupied, we have identified those, and we're going to continue, similar to the Washington campus, room 350, make adjustments if situations occur day to day, so that we can have temporary relocation plans if needed, so we can make repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton. Ms. Hannah, I know you said you have one final question.
I forgot.
Okay. Mr. Riddle said he didn't have any
Okay.
questions.
Well, I don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank the team. I think this particular time that we're in, as the superintendent said, and we all know, these are uncharted waters. There's a lot of planning that's gone on. A lot of things are happening behind the scenes. But I've talked to teachers in other districts, and they're well aware too. They're very anxious. They don't know what's going to happen as we start to get back the children here in a few weeks. And we're doing, what we can do. We have a large district, and there's a lot. I feel confident that we have a great team behind us here in every one of our schools. I'm pleased with what I saw happening here on some of the new people that we've hired or promoted. So I'm quite confident that our district is moving forward in a very competent manner and a very safe manner too. So I appreciate the plan that you've presented. And I think all of us on the board, are anxious as well how this is going to work out. But I feel confident that we've got a good team behind us. We've done well, unlike other districts during this pandemic. And I'm quite happy with where we're going. And I'm quite confident that we're going to continue to move and deal with this pandemic as we return and as our kids return. We all know that we're dealing with children, some who have done very well in remote, but many who have not. So we're going to deal with it. And we're going to continue to adjust as the need arises, as we evaluate how these children are doing. It's not going to be a short-term fix either. It's going to take a long time. So we're going to be patient, and we thank the administration for the work that they've done and to continue to do to meet the need of our children. That's our job. That's what we're here for. So I just want to say thank you for the presentation that you've made and for the work that's being done and the confidence that we have as a board in what you're doing for our community and our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle, and for those remarks. So now we are at President's Report. This is something that I used to do when I first started on the board, and that is wear the shirts at school. So I'm proudly rocking my Edith Smith Wildcat shirt. I just want to take a moment to thank the Board of Education and echo what one of the speakers at the Edith Smith renaming ceremony said, and that is, I appreciate each and every single one of you for having the courage to make the decision to see something that was wrong or that many perceive to be wrong, and to right it and to face public criticism to do it. And so I'm hoping that is the mantra by which we go into this next year, and that is doing what is right and moving forward for students. I want to take just a moment to recognize Mr. Alajakis, who has helped navigate this school renaming process. And has really helped move us through this way, and I think a way in which we honored all of the different voices. We came out with a process that was fair, that provided input, and at the end of the day that got us to where we are today. And so it's not something that he signed up for. This wasn't a decision that he made, but he helped steer the ship and got us over a few, got us through it. So thank you. And I would, with that, also like to invite individuals out to the school renaming for John Lewis, which will be happening on the 7th, Saturday at 1 p.m. And that is the school formerly named as Thomas Jefferson Middle School. So I invite the public and the board out to that. I know they received an invitation. We had a really good turnout for the Edith Smith renaming, and I'm hoping that we have just as good a turnout for the renaming of John Lewis Middle School. So with that, I'm not going to speak too long. It's 8:54. Board of Education, I will be ending this meeting at 9 p.m. So there's only an information item which has been presented for first reading. Ms. Vanderbroek has asked that all recommendations or changes be given to her office by close of business on Friday. So you have it. We've had it for a couple days. Look at it, review it. If you have any changes, please get that to her, because we plan on bringing it back at our next board meeting for a second review and approval. second reading and approval.
Right.
There weren't any old business or new business items that any board members asked me to put on the agenda. Ms.
Okay.
Hannah had one comment that she wanted to bring up, and she did ask me previously, so I will allow her that opportunity. And then we're going to go to board member time if there aren't legal reports, and then we will conclude the meeting. So, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I'm kind of standing out on a pirate ship on the plank. So, but I am proposing that the Board of Education and the Waukegan School District give each student in our school district from our ESSER funds. Wait, I'm trying to find my talking points here. That we give each of our students for wait, I want to say this properly, so you guys give me a minute to find it. Oh, okay. To issue each student a $150 gift card for clothing from our ESSER 3 funds, and it will, as I look at things, and it would assist our parents, and since we have moved away from requiring uniforms in our middle school and our elementary schools, it's $2,250,000. Okay, and that is based on last year's enrollment of 15,000 students, but I'm not sure if that's quite accurate. But I did that just as a guesstimate. But it would help many parents that have multiple children that are going to have to provide clothing for throughout the school year, and it would also help students with social emotional in terms of dealing with other students that or other young people that have the money to buy clothing that is in fashion, trendy, all that kind of stuff. And some of the, to eliminate some of the bullying. And did I say there's multiple children?
Yeah. So
I said that there's multiple children in families, and we have the ESSER 3 funds for student learning loss, and they emphasize the social emotional component of all of that. And
so I think, Ms.
why
Hannah,
not?
for time, if we can bring it back as a discussion topic, so the topic has been introduced. What Ms. Hannah is suggesting or asking the board to consider is to give each student $150 credit. Gift card. We're not prepared to discuss that this evening, but it has been suggested as a discussion topic for a future meeting. So thank you for that, Ms. Hannah, and we can get more information and discuss it as a Board of Education. With that, I'm going to go to board member time. I'm going to start down at the end with Ms. Gonzalez.
Well, I want to thank everyone for bearing with us, those who came in the audience. just want to give a shout out to our operation and maintenance teams for making summer feel like summer. Attending several of the celebrations at our schools, like the renaming, have been really, really fulfilling for me. Reconnecting with teachers and staff and, different people in the community, learning more about Waukegan has been really, really nice. But I also recognize that that's a privilege. I'm vaccinated. A lot of our people are vaccinated, so I appreciate our partners and organizations in the community who are still, advancing, trying to get people out to go get their vaccinations and educating people on why it's important so that we can start gathering again like this. And I'll be rooting for the U.S. and Mexico in the Olympics, but appreciating people like Simone Biles, who I admire personally on many levels, but who are prioritizing mental health, since that's been the theme in a lot of our discussions lately. So I hope our students take a page from her book and a lot of other athletes who are prioritizing their mental health. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Wozniak.
Just a reminder that fall sports are already starting to kick off, and the last free physical is Wednesday from 10 to 3 at Weiss Field. So get your students in there. 8/4, August 4th. So it's just, I can't believe school's starting in 2 weeks. It's unbelievable. Summer just started. And,
You ready?
Right.
What?
No, I was a little-
Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
You're right.
And enjoy the rest of your summer.
Awesome. Mr. Riddle.
Just want to thank my fellow board members for their passion about education in our community, and thank all of our staff who have worked so hard this summer. And I feel confident that we're going to do the right thing for our children and our community as the kids come back to school. And thank you, and enjoy your last 2 weeks of freedom. Have a good night. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Ms. Leguizamo.
It's a page board president. No, I'm gonna keep it sweet and simple. No, I actually just wanted to remind the community that this Saturday, July 31st, will be Waukegan's Resource Fair. At the Resource Fair, families of Waukegan Public Schools will receive backpacks, school supplies, and/or clothing, depending on what item they signed up for. Unfortunately, it's now closed, the sign up, so you can't sign up for that resource fair. But for those that have signed up, you will receive an email or have already received it to go and get your items. On top of that, there's also going to be a vaccine event that day. So as a reminder, this is open to all of Lake County, not just Waukegan Public Schools students or families. And that vaccination will be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can register through the AllVax. Of course, an ID is required, and anyone under 18 must please bring a legal guardian with you to the vaccination site. So the volunteers are still needed for Friday and Saturday. So if anybody has any time, Friday or Saturday, Fridays volunteer hours would be from 12 to 5, or Saturdays would be from 8:30 to 3 p.m. Even if it's 30 minutes, we'll accept it. Right, so the location will be at People's Choice Family Fun Center, located at 2650 Belvedere Road. That is the new location. If you do want to sign up to be a volunteer for any of these 2 days, please contact Miss Carolina Fabian. You can email her at cfabian@wps.org, or call her at 224-303-1036. While you're at People's Choice getting your vaccination or your school supplies, don't forget to just stop by also at People's Choice. Have a little mental health day for you and the family, and enjoy their food and their entertainment. So hopefully we'll see you out there, you guys. Thank you.
And adult bumper cars.
Oh, and adult bumper cars. All right, that's gonna be a big thing. Thank you.
Awesome. Mr. McBride.
I really don't have too much to say, but it's something that's been burdening my heart, and that is the fact that I brought it to the superintendent's attention as well as the board president. I would like for us to come up with a think tank in dealing with the issues that's going on with our students, especially our black and brown students. And I'm saying that because there's a lot of disparity with them being suspended, with them being having all sorts of issues with substance abuse. And we've been talking about that quite a bit tonight, social and emotional. Those are the things that I recognize that goes on with inside the building with our students that cause them not to be able to achieve academically. And I think that they could do better if we do better for them. But I'd like for us to come up with a think tank, because I don't know everything, and the individuals that's coming up with all these different suggestions and ideas that's going to help our kids. I think that we have individuals that the think tank can come up with some suggestions too that really can see out of the lens of their eyes what's really going on, because they have to deal with it every day when they're out of school as well as in school. So I've asked for that think tank, and I view our kids as well as Kellogg's, view Kellogg's, T-Mobile, T-Mobile. When they're trying to get something moved, they go into a conference room. When they come out with some results. And we have to do the same thing for our children. So I'm asking for that think tank for individuals, more so than just the board, individuals that's Dr. Naults, you, Dr. Bubbles, Brandon, myself, as well as Bridget, Charmaine, Dr. Charmaine, and come up with some suggestions on how we can do what we can do to move the needle to push our kids forward to do better than what they're doing and what we want to see them do. Now I'm asking for that think tank. We tried this back in, I think, a couple years ago in February, where we had State of the Union with little black boys and girls over at the high school. We had that, and as a result of that, I didn't see a whole lot come out of it. We just went through the motions. So I'd like to go back to the table and come up with a think tank and see if we come up with some suggestions and ideas on what we need to do to get our kids to where they need to be, to bring them out of some of the things that they're having right now in terms of troubles.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. And I'm sure we'll talk to the superintendent about that. Ms. Hannah?
I'd just like to remind the superintendent and the executive team that this is a very complex thing that we're dealing with our educating our children. Making sure that our staff is satisfied and productive, and making sure that everybody is included. And I am looking forward this year to the equity director guiding things that has to do with our children, our staff, making sure that equity is truly being practiced in our school district, and not just talking points and things that you get a quote in the paper or something like that, and it's not really happening. Because, and I'm saying that only to say that that I was a little bit disappointed in all of the hires, and that I didn't see any African Americans in those hires, and I'm gonna hope that we get better at that. And one other thing, and just something, the need for children and clothing. They're having a clothing drive. Also today, the United Way also are soliciting for clothing for kids. So I'm adding that to my request, or the seriousness of trying to give kids $150 gift card to go buy clothes and shoes. So, because everybody sees the need, so.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Finally, I just want to remind the board to help spread the word from Deputy Moulton that the district HVAC improvements that we sponsored with Johnson & Johnson with to conduct, that they'll be having a meeting at the Lincoln Center boardroom Tuesday, August 3rd at 10 a.m. Basically, we want to make sure that local contractors, organizations, and individuals know that how they can be a part of this project. It's a multi-million-dollar project spanning where a lot of the schools will be touched. And so we want to make sure that our community knows about it, can participate in it, has the information, and are aware. So Board of Education, if you can please spread the word. Tuesday, August 3rd, 10 a.m. right here at Lincoln Center in the boardroom. There'll be a presentation, and we want to make sure that as we spend these funds on improving our community, that our community is receiving the proceeds and the benefits of it as well. With that, I'd like for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Meeting adjourned.